Seeing none, the Holy Gospel according to St. John is written in the 6th chapter. Jesus turned to those who were following him and said, "I am the bread of life, the bread that comes down from heaven, the true bread given from the Father. Those who wish to live will eat my flesh, and those who eat my flesh shall live." And those who were there listening started to talk amongst themselves, "How can he give us his flesh to eat?" And Jesus turned to them and said, "Very truly I tell you, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will not have life. For I abide in the Father, and those who eat my flesh will abide in me, and I will abide in them." For the Father is the living Father, and I live through him, and those who eat my flesh and drink my blood will have life, life forever. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, I don't know about you, but this is now the 4th Sunday in a row that Jesus is the bread of life. And as a preacher, I'm kind of getting a little tired of it. I don't know if you guys are getting a little bored with it either, too. But then again, it's one of those things that if something's important, you're supposed to repeat it one last time next Sunday. So we'll soon be out of the Bread of Life series. But apparently it must be something important. And it's kind of one of those difficult things for us to deal with. Not quite the same way that the hearers 2,000 years ago were struggling with thinking, is this cannibalistic you're talking about, Jesus? Because we understand a little more because, well, we know the next chapters in the saga. We know about the Last Supper, and that Jesus will take bread and wine and make it something else, and that he will go up to the cross and give his body and his blood for us. And this is what he is talking about. It's kind of like, picking up a murder mystery and reading the last chapter and then starting to read the rest of the book. We know it's the butler. We know what Jesus is talking about, that the body and blood has already been sacrificed. We will come forward to the altar table and we will receive bread and wine. We will receive in faith his flesh and blood nailed to the cross for our sins, for our sake. It's also kind of one of those difficult ones too because, Jesus, when he talked to the people of his time, spoke to things that were important to them, and talking about bread and bread of life and bread that is important to us. Well, this past week when we were down, our family was down in Ocean City for our vacation, though we didn't get all the rain you guys got, but it was still humid. And at one point, Graham went to get a bagel for breakfast and opens up and says, "They're all moldy." It's kind of happening these days. Bread doesn't last long. Got to eat it quickly because it's molding quicker. Just the conditions of life. But we weren't in some sort of horrible panic because we were going to starve to death, in spite of the fact that at times Christopher will stand there with the refrigerator door open, staring into this thing full of stuff, saying, "There's absolutely nothing to eat." Those of you with teenagers understand this one. Absolutely nothing to eat, but we won't starve. Jesus hears at his time, bread was very important. A loaf that day had value. Food that they may not get. So it's hard for us middle-class Americans who stand there staring into full refrigerators trying to figure out what we're going to eat because we have absolutely nothing to eat, to comprehend, to deal with those kinds of things. James writes in his epistle that faith without works is dead. Luther would pick up on this and again agree with that, saying, it's not that works that make faith, but faith that inspires work. That in faith We are inspired and filled with God's love and mercy, and we want to go out there and do something. So perhaps for those of us who've already read the last chapter and know it's the butler, for those of us who don't have to worry about, the loaf is stale and moldy, but we're not going to starve. But we have been fed with the true bread of life. Jesus' sacrifice on the cross for us. And we are filled with that love, that forgiveness, that perhaps we will be inspired in acts of love. As Jesus turned to Peter once and said, "If you love me, feed my sheep, feed my children. Care for those around you that you can care for." We have a little pantry out here. I hope you've noticed. I hope you've thought about it. And I hope you've brought things for it from time to time and continue to do so. My office window looks out there, and I'll see throughout the week somebody stop up and will take a few things. It's not a food pantry that's meant to feed an entire family all week. It's to get you by. And people stop who are in need, who for them, yes indeed, that bread that went moldy was difficult, is difficult. And there it is, out of love, because we have been fed. We feed the starving around us. And in October, there's going to be, over at our sister congregation, an event from a group called Feed My Starving Children. An organization started by Lutheran, so it's okay, out in Minnesota. And they'll bring in a semi with all kinds of supplies, and there'll be opportunities to sign up for a 2-hour time slot. Not a huge commitment, won't break your life there, but an opportunity to be able to help. And it's bagging up meals that will be sealed up, and they'll be sent off to people in need, people who are hungry, people whose homes and lives have been devastated by natural disasters. An opportunity that we have been fed. We have been fed with the true bread, and we are filled with the love of God. And we are called and empowered to reach out and feed God's starving children.